y'all, Sai here. So, husband and I have some friends, Keith and Sonja, and Keith wants to make an Intarsia for Sonja. And they, by the way, have a YouTube channel and it's called Someday Chronicles. And what they do is they make videos of where they travel around across the country. And then also Sonja has a segment where she makes quilts and she shows the progress of her making her quilts and stuff. So it's pretty cool, and I'll leave a link down in the description box so that you can go check them out. Anyway, Keith asked me if I would show him how I make an Intarsia. And he's here today to get started.
Hi!
The pattern Keith wanted to make is a Kathy Wise pattern called Cardinal on Branch. He said Sonja loves cardinals and he thought she would really like this pattern. So as I showed Keith how to go about making Intarsia, I told him there are many ways to do just about every step. And I thought it would be good too if I also made a cardinal so that I could show him how I do it. The first was cutting out all of the pieces of the paper pattern. This was after we picked out the woods we wanted to use. We both chose different woods for most of the pieces, so it will be fun to see how different they look. We used 3M 77 spray adhesive to spray the backs of the papers, and I showed Keith how the pieces will fly all over the place and how a skewer stick or something can be used to hold it down until you get some glue on it. We talked about wood grain, and on this pattern the grain direction is nearly the same for the belly, the feathers, and the tail. And I cut all of those pieces together, which is a segmentation, while Keith chose to cut each of those independently, and he also chose to make the belly out of a different wood, making it a different color from the rest of the bird, which ended up looking very, very cool. So here we are on the scroll saws. I had Keith using the Hegner with the Mag Light. I used the Hawk, and we both used a number 5 modified geometry blade. I kept asking Keith how the blade felt as it was cutting, and then I realized, okay, he doesn't have much experience using a scroll saw, so I thought, well, maybe we should just change the blade out. Once I did that, he said it made a world of difference. So that's my first failure as an instructor, so sorry about that, Keith. We got a lot of the project cut out before we called it a day and would resume whenever he was able to sneak away to work on the project. This was a gift for Sonja, so he was coming over to help husband with stuff and secretly working on the Intarsia too. A few days later, we were able to resume where we left off. Once we had all those pieces cut out, then we put some mineral spirits on the papers, and that softened the glue and let most of the papers slide off the wood. Next was rough shaping. I showed Keith how I used the big pneumatic drum sander with 100 grit, and he started shaping away. He really took this on and was a natural at seeing the shape and reproducing it. I did show him how to sand with a shim, so he sanded the feathers together, and that is always a tricky deal, trying to keep those pieces taped onto the shim. So the sander did grab a few times, sending some of the pieces to the floor, and that happens to all of us, but luckily we were able to find all of the pieces. And he did get one scratched knuckle, but again, we've all done that. Next I showed Keith the flex drum sander, and he started using that to fine shape and sand the pieces. He was also filming for he and Sonja's channel, which I thought was pretty cool.
So we got the rough sanding done, got all the pieces cut out, and now we're doing some final sanding before we put this together. I think it's looking pretty good.
I started rough shaping mine at this time. Keith used a lightning strip to sand some detail in the tail feathers and on those feathers that fluff off the back of the head. He also did some hand sanding, smoothing all of the edges and reaching those areas that the flex drum couldn't reach. While he was hand sanding and fine tuning everything, I was using the flex drum with 220 for my final shaping and sanding. And before you know it, he was all ready to apply the finish. He used Old Master's Polygel, wiping it on each piece, then after he put it on for a few pieces, he wiped it off until it felt dry. I remember the first time I used this stuff, My pieces didn't dry. I consulted a friend and he told me they need to be wiped dry a few minutes after putting it onto the piece. The directions on the can don't explain this, so I was very grateful for another Intarsia friend's help. Thanks, Jim! So now I can pass along all those helpful hints on to Keith. And it was really great to see all the colors pop, and that never gets old. Keith left for the day, and while he was gone, I finished up my sanding and then put Old Masters on mine to get it to the same point that he is at. In our next session, we should be able to get it all done. On the last day, I showed Keith how I go about cutting the backer. We put a fine spray of glue onto the thin plywood and then put our projects onto our pieces of plywood. Then we used a mechanical pencil to trace around our projects. Then we removed them and made a cut line just inside of our trace line. Yay! There they are. Then we both cut them out on the scroll saws. And then we sanded off the fuzzies. Next, we checked the fit of our backers, and Keith's pieces all fit perfectly, and he was good to go.
His eye keeps falling out when I move his face.
Oh yeah, I just left the eye out too. I told Keith I like to darken the edge of my backer, and he thought he would like that too, so he used a Sharpie to color the edge black. Once he had that finished, we lasered a verse to the back. He wanted to put Matthew 6:26, which says, "Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they?" And I thought that was a great verse for a Cardinal Intarsia. Next was to start gluing. Once again, I had Keith put all of the pieces back onto the backer, and I had him pick which one he wanted to glue first. So now, you pick which piece you want to be your anchor that you're going to glue up against. He did something I had never thought to do. He decided the branch would be his first piece, so he held onto it and he removed all of the pieces, and he used a pencil to mark where that one piece goes. I thought that was genius. I've only been doing this since 2010 and had never thought of marking that first piece like this. Live and learn. Anyway, so he glued down that first piece. We are using Titebond Quick and Thick. This stuff is thick, dries fairly quickly, and dries clear. And I just love it for Intarsia. I call that first piece the locking piece because you let it set up before gluing more pieces down so they lock in place against that nice solid piece. This helps to avoid drifting pieces. Then he replaced all of the other pieces. Since he had marked with a pencil where that first piece goes, he didn't have to jive the pieces around very much to make sure they were all in the right place on the backer. While we waited, I also set my locking piece. I chose to do the belly first. After a bit, Keith began gluing the rest of his pieces, and I got mine all glued up too.
And there it is, my first attempt at Intarsia. Of course, I had a really good teacher.
And for a little extra with the eye, I added a drop of Krylon Triple Thick, and Keith did too. While Keith was off helping husband, I thought I would work on the hanger. Okay, so we put the verse on the back, but then when I see where the hanger needs to go, it's going to go right over the verse, which it's a pretty big verse, so that makes sense. It'd be blocking the verse. I thought, well, if we put screws here and then had a wire hanging, it would still hang like right there. So I'm going to try to do that. So I am drilling and thinking I need to be careful not to go too deep, and what do you know? On that second hole, I went through the project. Oh, rats. I went through the front. And it went right between two pieces, damaging both of them. Well, at least it was on mine and not Keith's. I was going to stop, but I thought I would just keep going to see if putting the wire on would work okay. Okay, got it to work. have to figure out how to fix the hole. I'm glad I did it to mine and not to Keith's. Oh. Live and learn. Lives and learns. I heard the men driving up to the shop and I let them know what I had done. Husband adjusted the drill bit so it wouldn't go through Keith's project.
You got me really, really hesitant right now.
Oh,
Well, that's why I shortened the drill bit up. Because it won't go through now.
Even with it shortened up, I'm
Looks like you might need to be down there a little bit more.
down here?
Yeah,
Yes.
about there.
Yeah, about there. There. And the thing with this too is when you're putting the screw in, hang on to the back because the screw will tend to push the
Push it
piece
out.
off.
Yeah.
So if you hang on, then the piece will go into the screw will go into both instead of.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've popped them off before. How many Marines does it take?
2. That's probably good. Hang on a sec. Let's get this one. Okay.
It is kind of funny putting this big of screws and wire on something so small.
Perfect. So then here's your
I'm
wire.
going to read the verse because I see it says Matthew, but.
And the way I do the wire is I do one side first, and then
Oh,
I
cool. That's a
guesstimate,
good verse.
and then I cut the other side off. Yeah.
Okay, so how many times did you wrap it around?
I went around, so like 2, and I go underneath this because you want this to stick out to hang on the wall.
Tell me now.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, she waits till after you do it.
I watched the clock this time, and this took us a little over 11. And Sequoia, and I don't remember what this wood was, do you?
Not right off, no.
Then ebony for the face and the eye, and holly for the catch light. And Keith.
I used zebra wood for the branch, poplar for the leaves. The redwood I used for the main body of the Cardinal is actually some redwood that her dad got. This was
Sequoia. Yep.
For the belly.
Yeah. So
It was a lot of fun.
So thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
And I know that Sonja's gonna love it. So yay! All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Sonja yells at me all the time because I wing it all the time. I'm one of those people that hate dentists. I hate going to the dentist.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I was scared of the dentist until I started doing it myself, and then I was like, okay, this isn't so scary now.